I am very delighted and honored to introduce CITRIS Director Kostas Spanos, who will tell us about the Athena Awards, and then followed by the presentation of the first Athena Award. Kostas?
Yes, thank you very much for this excellent fireside chat. By the way, it was amazing, and thank you all for putting together this amazing event today. I'm very honored to present the Athena Awards. As you know, the Women in Tech at UC Athena Awards recognize those who embody, encourage, and promote the inclusion of women in technology. The awardees are leaders who inspire others to pursue and persist in technical careers by way of their outstanding contributions and service and mentorship to foster inclusion in science and technical fields. This is actually the 5th year that we have presented these awards, and we have received over 40 nominations across 4 categories: executive leadership, academic leadership, early career, and next generation engagement. Nominations are open to all candidates regardless of gender, age, institutional affiliation, and country of residence. Recipients of previous awards continue to serve as technical innovators and role models for women and girls to pursue their interest in science and technology. We are pleased to recognize the outstanding contributions of this year's winners with custom awards made in the CITRIS Invention Lab and funds to support the winners' future research programs. So here we present our first Athena Award for Executive Leadership, and Michelle Neitz, professor at Golden Gate University, and the one who nominated the award winner, Sheila Warren, is going to make the presentation.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here today. And I'm delighted that Sheila Warren has won this award. And so there's 2 ways that I could do this. I could talk about her extraordinary qualifications, her 2 degrees from Harvard, including a Harvard Law degree. I could talk about the impact she's had on this industry in her role as the head of blockchain and digital assets and data policy at the World Economic Forum. But I decided not to do that. Instead, I'm going to tell a story that I think encapsulates why Sheila deserves this award. So I first met Sheila at a conference, the She 256 conference at Berkeley. And it was a conference, as you know, dedicated to supporting women in the blockchain space. And Sheila got on stage with a baby, a young baby, and did her presentation on stage with the baby on her lap. Now, I have to tell you, in the field of law, which is my field, and technology, this was a radical act, right? To get on stage with a baby. And the message was, I'm important enough, and my baby is important enough, that my baby belongs wherever I do. And the message to young women was, we're going to break the norms of law and technology. And frankly, it was a message to her peers as well, because I remember it years later, right? And I think that Sheila decided, I'm not going to be a woman succeeding in a man's world. Instead, I'm going to turn this into a woman's world. And for that, I think she is incredibly deserving of this award. And so I'm thrilled that Sheila is receiving this Athena Award. Thanks so much.
Michelle, I'm going to get emotional because thank you so much for sharing that story. You know, there's a backstory there, which of course is always funny, which is the craziness of that morning, recognizing that I wanted to make sure I was able to moderate this panel with these brilliant young women and recognizing that there was no childcare to be had. And so my option space was bring the baby, and that seemed to me absolutely the right thing to do. And I'd taken that she's now 2 years old, that little one. She just turns 2 actually this past couple of weeks. And my hope, you know, I can't say that I had in my mind necessarily everyone should do this. It should be totally normal to do this, and I'm just going to make it normal to do this because this is the choice that I have. And I have to say, during this pandemic, that moment and moments like that, because I did that again and again in other contexts, have occurred to me as I think about the challenges that women are facing during this time. So thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I also want to thank CITRIS Dr. Crittenden, Dr. Spanos, and the College of Engineering for all the work that you're doing to promote, sustain, and really celebrate the growth and careers of women technologists. I'm really honored to stand alongside my fellow award winners, Professor Matlock and Ms. Canepa Vega, and with the phenomenal women who have graced this space before me. And I really want to dedicate this award to everyone, to all of us, everyone here today who fights for inclusive leadership, equitable workplaces, and really an improved tech culture for everyone, including women. Now, we heard earlier from Leila Takamaya about why it's so critical that human-centered design processes include women. That's something I think we all here today agree on. But much has also been written about the dearth of women in senior leadership positions within the tech industry. Now, the hand-wringing about this, has ranged from the pseudo-fact base, the so-called pipeline problem, which is easier and easier, I think, to disprove every passing year as we see the number of graduates, women graduates, increase, to the fundamentally flawed concept that women just choose motherhood over career, to the blatantly offensive things like women just don't have the chops or they can't cut it. And I want to address the first two. I won't even grace the third with any more airtime. So let me clearly say, the pipeline problem in many fields is just not real. And in any field, it is no excuse. According to the National Science Foundation, the percentage of PhDs in STEM fields in the US earned by women hovers around 42%. So even if your hiring bar is a PhD, qualified women exist. Finding them is not magic, it's priorities. The pipeline metaphor I find problematic for a number of reasons. It suggests that we can create a more diverse technology workforce simply by starting more students earlier in STEM and computer science. And I am certainly very much in favor of early exposure to these disciplines and for normalizing them as career paths all along a student's educational journey. But focusing exclusively on the pipeline is, I find, overly simplistic and limiting. On the one hand, only about 40% of people who have careers in STEM showed an interest in those disciplines during secondary school and even took the relevant coursework like calculus or whatever it might be, robotics. On the other hand, women without prior exposure can lack the confidence to embark on brand new careers, especially as they enter midlife. This is in part because of the lack of role models, so the problem just winds up perpetuating itself. An important statistic that I focus on a lot is that half of women in tech roles leave them by the age of 35, 50%. So they're getting the jobs, but they're not staying. And that's often because they're not paid equally, promoted, or included. What does a lack of inclusion look like? Here's a story. When I worked on Wall Street, deal closings were often celebrated officially with a big dinner, fancy restaurant with the clients, everything. But after that, where the real bonding happened was a trip to a strip club. Now, I'd been prepared for golf when I joined Wall Street, but this was a whole new thing entirely. And you can imagine who went and who didn't go. Now, it can be a lot worse than that, which I experienced. Women sometimes leave because they face harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. And I'm really grateful to the brave women who've told these stories in the press, often at tremendous personal cost, because we need to shine a very bright spotlight on this behavior and hold perpetrators and their corporations accountable. And then, of course, sometimes women leave because they're not supporters. They try to balance career success with motherhood. Now, if motherhood and career success are incompatible, that is a systemic failure, not an individual one. Before the pandemic, women consisted more than 50% of the country's workforce, underlining their critical importance to the economy. But that number dropped sharply as many women, particularly mothers of young children, have been furloughed or laid off. Many others have had to choose between showing up at work or caring for their children, who, with daycare centers closed and school underway remotely, would have been left without supervision otherwise. And by February of this year, estimates were that more than 3 million American women had left the workforce. So the pandemic has shone a harsh spotlight on the many ways our systems were already failing women and have accelerated some of those problems. We can and we must do better. I often like to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who we lost recently, a trailblazer in her own field, and Michelle in my former field, and Michelle's field of law. Women belong in all places decisions are made. And the way to keep women is to do more than just hire them, it is to include them. Fostering and maintaining an inclusive culture where women can thrive needs to be a priority at every level. I'm really grateful to the World Economic Forum, my employer, for its leadership in this area. The first year I attended Davos as part of Forum staff, our co-chairs were all women. The Forum has a rule that no panel can be all male. There needs to be a woman on the panel, and that can also include a moderator. And until very recently, my own team, which I built from scratch, was all women. This was never looked upon as anything other than the logical result of my having hired the best candidates who applied for the roles. I consider it my responsibility to visibly and unapologetically lead from the strength I draw from being a woman. This strength derives from the examples of strong women like my grandmother and my mother set for me, from the support I receive from my wonderful husband and my 3 young daughters, from my phenomenal team. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the village of teachers and childcare workers who, even throughout this pandemic, have supported me and other families in the work that we do. I do think, Michelle, to your comment, it's really important that as women, we recognize that the things that we face, the challenges, are strengths. I often tell my team, I thought I knew how to prioritize and be efficient. I had no idea until I had a child what that meant. I'm lucky and grateful to have an employer who allows policies like time shifting work. So I can choose the hours that I spend with my family dedicated and the hours that I choose dedicated to my work around some of the other complex ecosystem of care that we can cobble together at various times. And I draw constant inspiration from my 3 daughters who are constantly striving. There's nothing quite like watching a young child wrestle with a problem, and try to get it right, whether it's math, whether it's a puzzle, whether it's rudimentary coding, whatever it might be. Their persistence, their challenge, their curiosity is something I draw endless inspiration from and joy watching. And I feel the same way about members of my team and watching them learn and grow. We need to recognize that learning is a process. People don't come out of the womb fully formed as technologists or anything else for that matter. These subject matter can be taught, and it can be taught at any point along your journey. I always had an interest in science and technology, but I didn't move into the field full-time as a career until about 10 years ago. And in fact, I came at it from a legal lens, but I realized I could teach myself to code in languages I didn't already know. I had a confidence in generative experience I'd had previously, but I also had mentors who supported me in that effort and told me it was possible.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Your remarks are really inspiring, and I'm so delighted to welcome both Michelle and Sheila to the proceedings of the Women in Tech Initiative and to recognize your accomplishments with the Athena Award. We were able to serve together on the California Blockchain Working Group last year and got to know them a little bit that way. So I really highly admire and regard your leadership in all kinds of areas as women in tech, women in law, women in executive leadership. So thank you for joining us today.